All right. Hello, everyone. Good to see lots of first time. This is your first event, so welcome to Austin Design Week. Excited to have you here, folks from Austin, folks from other cities in the US and around the world. Very awesome. My name is Danielle Barnes. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm one of the co-founders and organizers of Austin Design Week, and I'm so thrilled to welcome you all here today. We have a great lineup happening this week, including this event, but events happening all day, all week, and we really encourage you to participate. So when you're part of an event, we'd love to hear from you. You can see our social handles at the bottom. You can tag us, hashtag ADW20, hashtag embrace. You can fill in what that blank is on. And Natalie, if you don't mind going to the next slide for me. Awesome. And then I encourage you to go to that bit.ly and check out the rest of the schedule. As I mentioned, there are events happening all the time. And if you haven't already, you should join our ADW Slack workspace. There is a link to that in your confirmation email, and that will allow you to connect with other folks in the Austin Design Week community. So we have a help desk channel if you need help at all. We also have an open community channel where folks are sharing what they've learned, following up with one another, connecting, and we're also sending announcements there. So it's another great thing to be a part of. And then last slide. And then finally, I just want to say thank you to our sponsors. As I mentioned, Austin Design Week is a completely free festival, a celebration of design in Austin, and we could not do that without our sponsors. So huge thank you to them. I also want to give a shout out to our volunteers and our hosts who came up with these amazing conversations for you to participate in during this week. So without further ado, I want to hand it over to our hosts. And again, thank you all so much for being here.
Thank you, Danielle. Hi, everybody. My name is Natalie Betts. I'm with the City of Austin Circular Economy Program, and we are so excited that you decided to join our workshop. So before we really get started, I'm putting in the chat a couple of housekeeping notes. So we will be together for an hour and a half this afternoon, or depending on where you are in the world, maybe a different time. We ask that you stay present with us. It's going to be a workshop. So unlike the webinars you might have participated in, there's going to be a lot of participation and active participation on your part. So plan for that. And now would be a good time to turn off, notifications, set your phone down, and really be here with us. Would be what we would ask from you. We'd also ask you to mute and unmute skillfully. So when we're in this big breakout, when we're in our main room, stay on mute if you can. And when you go into our breakout rooms, which will be in for a lot of the session, that's the good time to unmute so you can share really freely. We would love to see your beautiful faces, so please keep your camera on, unless, of course, you have internet issues or there's something going on in the background that you think would be distracting, but we would love to see you if possible. And then chat with purpose, we will be using the chat, as I'm already seeing you guys active in, which is amazing. And just take a minute to make sure that your name that is appearing in Zoom is your correct name. Sometimes people use a corporate account or something and it might be showing a company name. And also please add your pronouns so that we can address you with the correct pronouns when we're in our breakout rooms. So today's session, what we're going to do is we're going to learn about the concept of circular economy, and then we're going to practice applying that in a product redesign. Then we're going to take a minute and think through an exercise that helps us plan around unknown futures for your product, and then practice mitigating any unintended consequences that might arise in that unknown future. Since we're not going to be able to network as much as we would normally like in a workshop like this, a lot of you are saying hi in the chat, which is amazing. If you can also maybe add what you think of when you think of the term circular economy. If you can add that in the chat, that gives us a sense of kind of where everyone is coming from and what comes to mind first for you on this topic. We also encourage you, if you want to connect with other people who are interested in this topic, you can just go ahead and share your LinkedIn profile in the chat so that you can connect after the fact. I see Charisma thinks about no waste. Awesome, that's absolutely correct. Closing the loop from Helen, cradle to cradle from Stefania. Awesome. Efficiency, reusable, all correct. And part of what's great about circularity is that it embraces all of these concepts. Then beyond today, there will be more chances to connect. We have a circular meetup program that we're starting. It's a networking series starting in December. And we have a Slack channel called ATX Circular Economy, and we invite you to join there so we can continue this conversation. And we'll post links to that in the chat. And now when I'm saying we, who am I talking about? So we are the Circular Economy Program at the City of Austin. And that program is made up of myself. I manage our program, as well as Skyra Rideau, if you want to wave hello, and Maddie Morgan, who are two of your facilitators. We also have Max, who's our intern. If you want to wave hi, he's going to be kind of running our show on Zoom today, doing breakout rooms. So if you're having any technical questions, you have the ADW team as well as Max here to help you. And we also have here today with us two other members of our team from the city, Noel and Evie, who, if you're lucky, you'll be in one of their breakout rooms and get to meet them later today if you guys want to wave hello. So what we do at the Circular Economy Program at the City of Austin is we work to make Austin into the most vibrant circular economy in the United States, where every material can be put to its highest and best use within our local economy at every stage of its life cycle. Whether something is brand new or really broken and at the end of its life, we want to make sure that the value of that material is captured. And just a quick definition, it sounds like a lot of you are familiar with this term from what I saw in the chat, but we define circular economy as an economic system where waste is designed out and products are kept circulating in productive use at their highest value for as long as possible. And in this definition and in this concept of circular economy, we're really taking inspiration from the natural world that we're all a part of. Because in nature, there's no waste. There's waste from one organism or system, but it becomes the fuel or the food for something else. And we want to model our economic system after that idea. And as you can see in the image, you know, it's a step beyond just recycling, where we keep things out of the landfill for a little while, but really it's about rethinking, redesigning the way that we have our products that are put out into the world, materials, how those are constructed, so that trash and the landfill can be removed from the equation altogether. So what does this mean for you as a designer? We've put together some question prompts that we'll use for the rest of this session or for several of our exercises to help you think through how to create a product that is more circular. So thinking circular as a designer means asking yourself, how can I make it easier for this product to be used by many people? So for example, through sharing economy solutions, be used for many functions. So let's say you have a product that has one intended function, but what if that user no longer needs it for that purpose? What else could it be used for so it doesn't have to go become waste? How can we help things come back to the manufacturer for reuse or remanufacturing so they can be put into a new cycle by the people who know that product the best? How can we make it easier for the product to be fixed when it breaks or rarely break? You know, a lot of times something goes from being a perfectly loved item in your home, and then something happens to it, it gets stains, it gets broken, and it very quickly goes from a loved item to trash. So how do we prevent that from happening? How can we maintain the value of components for a product if it's no longer usable? So maybe the whole product doesn't function anymore, isn't useful, but what about all the pieces that make it up? How can you make it easier for it to make it into the right waste stream when it's no longer usable? So not only is it recyclable or compostable, but how does my user know that? And then finally, doing no harm to people or planet if it doesn't end up in the right place. So this is a big part of the problem that we see with plastic. So, you know, we think about plastic as, you know, a bad material sometimes, when plastic has a ton of beneficial uses and lots of advantages as a material. The problem with it comes when it ends up in the wrong place. It ends up in a marine environment where it does a lot of harm. So thinking through that in advance. And then you also want to ask yourself some questions about the materials that make up your product. So could it be made with less? Could it be made with more standardized or simple components? So things, you know, if it does break, maybe it could be fixed by going to the hardware store and getting a simple screw rather than a very special component or something you have to order from the manufacturer or that may not exist anymore. Could you make it with a recycled or reused material and be part of the process of giving something a second life? Is it made with something easily recyclable or compostable, especially in the context in which it will be used? And then finally, material itself that does no harm to the people who are making and the people who are using the product. So you want to think about reducing toxins in the material and also thinking about the manufacturing process of the product or the material. And why do you want to do this? And ask yourself all those questions and go through this training. A couple benefits that we see for designers are considering more facets of your customer's journey with the product. So thinking in the circular terms means thinking about lots of different points in time that your customer might interact with your product, not just when they first get it and they use it for the original intended purpose, but using it for a different purpose, or when they come to the moment where they don't need it anymore. So thinking more broadly about your customer's journey. And then also through that, if those experiences are all good, building trust and loyalty among the brand with your brand. And we think it also is a source of new inspiration. So hopefully just, having those questions can help spark new creativity. And there's another kind of sister school of thought that works really well with circular economy that you might have heard of, called biomimicry, which looks directly to the natural world for inspiration on design. So for example, if the picture here is of maple seeds, which do this really cool spin when they fall to the ground from a tree. And there's been drones and other things that have modeled their design for their wings off of this natural design. So the world of circular economy is kind of full of these new sources of inspiration. And then finally, meeting sustainability goals. If you or your company or your clients have sustainability goals, designing for circularity is a great way to get there. So now I was going to turn it over to Skyra, who is going to walk us through some real world examples of companies doing circular design and implementing circularity.
Thanks, Natalie. So we just wanted to give you all an idea of some case studies of some businesses who are incorporating circularity into their business models. So the first one we wanted to talk about was Circos. It's an online shop where you can rent high quality design clothes for children from newborn to 2 to 3 years, and maternity wear, of course, that fits your needs and your budget. So you pay a monthly fee for the number of clothes you're using at that moment, but you can also swap them out whenever it suits you best. And when clothes are returned, when they're outgrown, or either cleaned or reused, or worn out garments are recycled into something new. So it gives you an opportunity for you to wear new and high fashion clothes, but also the company itself is working to put those clothes back into circulation, either repair them or then recycle them into something new once they become overworn. They also work with sustainable brands, and they utilize sustainable packaging as well. So it's addressing a lot of the components of the circularity cycle. Next slide. Loliware is another case study. So Loliware is the world's leading seaweed-based material technology company, and it replaces single-use plastics. Specifically, it does straws made from seaweed. So it's an example of doing no harm and creating circular design decisions based on use. So straws are something that we use every day, that everyone uses usually one time, and then it can end up harming our marine wildlife because it ends up in our oceans. And so this is a really great way to kind of mitigate that and protect our wildlife and our environment at the same time. And of course, straws are usually too small to recycle, so this makes sense as an alternative for people to continue to use. Next slide. Another one that you all may be familiar with is the Swiss Army knife. Of course, it's a multi-function tool. It has a lifetime value, so people typically don't throw this away, so it rarely ends up in landfills, and it might be something that you or someone in your family passes down. So it's highly unlikely to break. It has a strong attachment and trust, and a lifetime warranty and repair option as well. So it's a really great example of a multifunctional product that can also be passed down and used for generations, because it usually lasts a really long time and it's unlikely for it to break. Next slide. So another example is Apple. We're all very familiar with Apple. It's a very recognized brand. It has a high degree of brand loyalty. And Apple is also working into incorporating more circularity principles into their business model. So they have, since 2018, used completely recycled aluminum for their MacBook Airs and their MacBook Minis. And they also have a robot named Daisy. It's 33 foot long. It pulls apart iPhones with its 5 arms, and it takes those different components and either sends them back to a remanufacturer or it uses them to refurbish phones that they then resell. And of course, they also have a take back program as well. Some of the things though, as companies are looking to become more circular, like Apple, there are some other components of their business model that they can think through more. So for example, specialty screws and non-standard cables. We all know, like, typically when new products come out, there's very customized and specialized cables. So maybe consider thinking about having more standardized cables for their phones and their electronics would be another component of circularity that they could add to their product, to their business model. And then of course, sometimes iPhones can also be difficult to repair. And then our last case study is Diesel. So Diesel and Coca-Cola partnered on a recollection concept, which includes apparel made from recycled plastic bottles and recycled cotton. And it features Coca-Cola's branding. So the goal is to raise awareness about recycling and the potential outcome of recycled PET fibers. But one of the things when we're thinking about companies incorporating circularity into their models is they use blended fibers, which are usually hard to recycle, and they cannot be recycled profitably. So it usually ends up in a landfill. So one thing that we need to consider is when we're incorporating circularity principles into our business models is the end of life of that product, right? Can it be taken apart? Can it be reused? Can it be turned into something else? So we don't want, the goal is to minimize the opportunities for new raw materials to have to be extracted and used again and again. But Diesel also has a new upcycling collection, which is made from dead stock, which refers to inventory that doesn't sell or doesn't have a high likelihood of selling in the future. So the idea is to continue to move in the direction of circularity as you continue to build out your business model, and also think about the entire process from end to end along your value chain. As we all continue to do more, we'll create a more better process for people and our planet as well. So those are just some examples of some case studies of businesses who are already circular from end to end or incorporating circularity principles into their design, into their business model. So now I'm going to turn it over to my coworker, Maddie, and she's going to give us some more information on the first group activity, which is circular redesign.
Thank you, Skyra. All right, so on to the workshopping part where you guys get to be active and do your own designing. Hopefully that's why you joined us. So the point of our activity is to give you all framework to design with circular principles at the forefront of the process in any type of design, especially if you're doing something around product design. And this is a great exercise as well to keep in mind when you're consuming goods and services as well. So in a few minutes after I explain the first batch of instructions, you'll automatically be transitioned into breakout rooms. There will be a facilitator in each room, a city staff member who will help guide you through the process. And then you're going to complete 3 activities before you return back to the main room for more instruction. And the first, so there's 3 steps that we're going to be going through. One is super quick, but as a group, you're going to select a product to redesign, then describe the functional, emotional needs, ideate, and redesign. Next slide, please. So the first thing you're going to do when you get into that breakout room, your facilitator is going to do a screen share, and they're also going to share a link in the chat to a Google Jamboard, which is just a whiteboarding tool. It's free and pretty self-explanatory to use. I'll show you how to use it here at the end of the instructions. But as a group, you're going to vote on an item that you want to work on for the course of the workshop. Next slide. And then for about 5 minutes as a group, you're going to brainstorm the functional and emotional needs of the object your group has chosen. So for example, if from that list, car was an option on there and we selected a car, we would be asking questions like, what does owning a car mean to you? And some of the things you might associate with having a car. So things like freedom, individuality, maybe status, depending on the type of car you have. And then also asking questions about the functional uses of the car. So for most purposes, a car is used to get from point A to point B. Maybe it's the convenience of having your own car or of having your own transportation. So just, you'll be throwing up sticky notes on the functionality and emotional purposes of your object that you've selected. Next slide. And then you're going to spend 5 minutes as a group ideating new products or services. So thinking back to the prompts that Natalie shared earlier in the presentation, and don't worry if you don't remember them, they will be in the Jamboard slides that you'll be using for reference. But you'll be thinking about what kind of improvements can you make to the product. For example, again with the car, if you wanted to reach more than one audience with your car so that it serves more than one person, maybe you think about a car rental system. If maybe your goal is that you want to maintain the value of the car components through their entire end of life, then maybe the car is manufactured in a way that all of the parts can be easily disassembled at its end of life and remanufactured. So really we're taking those circular prompts and applying them to your object that you've selected. And next slide, please. So your last step before we'll reconvene is you'll have 15 minutes to redesign your solution. And for those of you that are illustrators, there is an option that you can take the pen to the, or I guess your mouse to the computer screen and do some drawing of a rapid prototype. So basically taking your ideas and the understanding of the functional and emotional needs and seeing what ideas struck you as most promising from that step 2 and putting them together. So the goal there is to illustrate and describe your redesigned solution for the object you've selected. So as I mentioned, we will be using Google Jamboards, and this is what it looks like. And you'll see on the left side here, there is a panel of tools. That top panel, or the top button that looks like a pen, is a pen where you can draw. And then just below the mouse cursor button, there's a little square that looks like a sticky note if you think of it as a sticky note. And on there, when you're brainstorming ideas, you just click on that and you can type your idea in there and press send. We recognize that maybe not all of you will have access to open this in your browser. So each of your room facilitators will be screen sharing. And in the event that you can't use the sticky note functionality, feel free to put your ideas in the chat and the room facilitator will help transcribe those onto the board. So this first part is going to take about 26 minutes. So we'll return at, what's that, in 26 minutes. And Max is going to push us out in the breakout rooms. So if you have questions, your facilitators will be able to answer.
Had fun with those 2 exercises. I know my group had a lot of great ideas. So we're going to do a super fast share out now because we are getting close to the 30-minute mark. So we're going to start with group 5. If someone from your group wants to just share very briefly what product you picked, what you redesigned, and then what scenarios did you imagine and how did you fix it? So I'll give you like a minute and 30 seconds to go through that. So someone from group 5 want to start?
Our group forgot to pick a speaker. So anyone from group 5, Alex, Fiona, John, anybody else that was listening and want to share? Or maybe
Go for it, Noelle.
Oh, great. So we picked eyeglasses, and just thinking through, the different components of eyeglasses, like the frames versus the lenses, and how often like one breaks versus the other, maybe the lenses get scratched, and some sort of like sharing opportunity. The other thing is like people looking for wanting to get like new frames or kind of be like in the know. So is there kind of like sharing opportunity with glasses where they're more standardized pop out lenses? And then our dystopian sort of concepts with that was like, oh, if they're easily shared, then like are people stealing glasses? And then we leave all these like humans that are like out and about at work or wherever they may be and they have no glasses. We talked about if material that we're using to make those glasses just wasn't available anymore, what that would look like. Trying to think of what else our dystopian options were with glasses. There was several. When we talked about additional fixes, thinking about how we would a company like actually just going back to that model of like taking back glasses and then being able to cycle them back through, considering that glass in terms of lenses is infinitely cyclable, but not in a regular recycling bin. And so what would it look like? Like, how would we collect them? How could we incentivize people and the brand to actually turn those glasses back in and get cycled? You know, like if they drop them off, could they get some kind of voucher that would give them a discount, or actually give them like a free pair of glasses for cycling them back through the system, so that we could endlessly like reuse those materials? Because glasses are relatively, not perfectly, but relatively easy, at least the lens component, to separate and cycle back through. So that's kind of where we got.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. Group number 4. I think Evie, that was your group. You want to share quickly what you did?
Yes, but so our product was tennis shoes, and unfortunately, yes, we, just like Noelle, we did not pick a speaker, so any of y'all are welcome to speak up. But Natalie, as I mentioned, I have to run out and get my son. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I don't want a late fee. So thank you everyone for participating. But I think we had some really good feedback from everybody. And I hope that I'll just wait for somebody to speak up before I head out.
Someone help Evie out for me.
Help her not pay her late fee.
I can speak up briefly. We came up with some really interesting themes of sort of layers and modular shoes, ways to incorporate some style into them without them going out of style, and also functionality of using different soles for different locations. And then some of the problems, some of the solutions to some of the wastefulness of that were really interesting. I'm just looking at a couple now. Establishing a standard assembly for modular shoes that would be applied over different brands, so they would all have to conform to the same standard, so that parts wouldn't get wasted. Also, subscription services for shoe repair, using different kinds of materials that could be either upcycled or recycled. Upcycled, like car tires for soles and things like that. Let's see.
Well, you have to stop you there, Mark. That was awesome.
Sure.
Thank you for
Great.
sharing. Skyra, will you give us a super quick rundown of your group?
Yeah, so we chose the coffee machine, which is super hard to innovate around because there's already a lot of innovations inside of coffee machines. But what they decided to focus on was figuring out how to eliminate a lot of the waste that are generated from K-cups. So maybe having a metal K-cup that you can refill with different types of coffee. And our dystopian thought was, hold on, trying to do it quickly, sorry. What happens if it's broken or damaged? And so creating some sort of take back program that they could send them back and we could remanufacture it into the same cups.
Awesome, thanks. Maddie?
Yeah, our group chose to redesign the umbrella. And one of the redesigns we talked about was the material use. And so maybe a beeswax that was more sustainable input, and then also helped with like the water roll off of the actual umbrella. And then in our dystopian future with that element, we talked about if our demand for the product was so high that somehow we end up killing off the bees, what would we do? So we talked about, some constraints that we could put in place, planting more pollinator plants, putting money towards bee preservation with purchase of an umbrella. And then we also talked about like what other material could we use besides beeswax that would still be plant-based and vegan.
Awesome, thank you. I'm going to do a super short version of mine. We did styrofoam coolers, and we decided to replace styrofoam with a mushroom product as well as a fish byproduct that you can make into a bioplastic. And our dystopian scenarios were if people didn't compost it the way we wanted them to, and also if the fish byproduct ended up, we were so successful, we ran out of byproduct and had to farm new fish. So we came up with some solutions around that, like just communicating about composting. And one thought I thought was great from the group was really setting a goal for yourself as a company at the outset about climate so that no matter what happens, you hold yourself accountable to that. So thank you guys so much for joining us for this hour and a half. I hope you've enjoyed it. Max is putting some links in the chat, resources for circular design that you can reference going forward, as well as circular meetups that we're hosting and how to connect with us on Slack and our email address. So would love to connect with you guys and continue the conversation about circular design in Austin and the world. And I'll close it with that unless ADW has anything, closing remarks they need to add.
No, thank you so much, y'all. This was great. I actually just posted in the Slack channel and encouraged, folks to start to share what they learned. If y'all are open to sharing some of those links, I'm sure folks would love to see that in there too. So thank you all so much.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great Tuesday.
Thank you.